Yeah, certainly. So I was made Minister for Education, Sport and Culture back in March, and I knew what I was sort of letting myself in for. On the Isle of Man, we've got 4 main teacher unions, and they've been in dispute with the department for the last 18 months. And most of that has been in regard to pay, but also conditions as well. Now, on the Isle of Man, since 1992, we followed very much the UK model in terms of pay scales and also pay increases. But increasingly, the local unions have said that because of the increased cost of living on the Isle of Man, and because what they see as problems with recruitment and retention of senior leaders, they wanted more pay. And that's where some of the problems have been in terms of whether we continue to follow the UK model or whether we go above and beyond that and give extra resources for teachers. And so when I came in March, there wasn't an industrial dispute going on. There was action short of strike going on, which is quite complicated in terms of what teachers will do and won't do. And also there was a lot of bad feeling, to be honest with you. And so it's been trying to deal with that at the same time as very shortly after all the schools were shut and you had coronavirus and the effect that's had on education as well. And so what I'm trying to do now is, with the Education Department and with the Isle of Man government, pick up those pieces, go back into negotiations and try to get a fair and affordable deal for teachers on the Isle of Man. I mean, right at the start, I think the unions had different ideas about what they wanted, and that is possibly why it's taken so long to get to a point where I think we can settle this dispute. What happened earlier on this year was that all the teaching unions, all 4, got together and sat down and tried to have a cohesive and a concerted negotiation with the department, which I really welcome, because what we can't do is divide the profession, the teaching profession on the Isle of Man. We need a combined education service. We need to make sure that all teachers' voices are heard. So having the joint negotiations with all the unions around the same table, I think is really important. And again, they've come forward with various ideas of how to move forward. A lot of them involve extra money coming from government, but what we've had recently is the budget statement by the Treasury Minister, which shows that actually, in terms of the economic outcome for the Isle of Man, it's very uncertain. That for the first time in the Isle of Man's history, we're taking out an overdraft to deal with short-term cash flow, and we're really not sure about the future. So we've now had to go back to the unions with that new reality and trying to get a fair pay settlement that we can go forward with, and which is actually affordable within the current budget. In the past, it has been adversarial. I will have disagreements with unions, and they will disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. That's the way it should be. But what we should be doing is deal with those disagreements in a constructive way. I think in the past that hasn't gone well, and there has been mistrust and poor communication, and what I'm trying to do is put that right. So I've personally reached out to a lot of the general secretaries of the unions in the UK, had a chat with their senior negotiators who've in the past were coming over to the Isle of Man, now they're doing it virtually, to try to explain why the Isle of Man is different and why our education system is different to a lot of the other jurisdictions around us, particularly the United Kingdom, and why the settlement here and the way teachers are treated and respected and dealt with here should similarly be different. I've got the utmost respect for our teachers. I think we actually have a fantastic education service on the Isle of Man, but we can do better, but we can only do better together. And it's trying to get people around the table, get something that everyone's happy with, then we can move forward for the good of the teachers, but also obviously the pupils and their families as well. It's been mixed, to be honest with you. I think right at the start, a lot of the arguments were being carried out publicly, and there was one press release and then another press release, and I think that's caused a lot of confusion amongst the general public. What on earth is going on when we're reading conflicting things in newspapers or on social media, and tweets are coming out against somebody else, and it's been seen as a bit of a mess, as a bit of a muddle. I'd like to think that now I have far more direct access to those people. I've got on my mobile phone all the local union officials. I've spoken and sent emails to and letters to all the national officials as well. So they know where I am. They know my phone number. They can get in contact with me. There will still be some PR. There will still be press releases. And that's the reality here, because we're into negotiations and we're dealing with national trade unions who have hired staff whose job this is. But I hope that what we can do on the Isle of Man is listen to the individual teacher. One of the great things the last 2 weeks is being able to go around to individual schools when they're open, there's kids in, and talk to teachers. And we've got some inspirational teachers on the Isle of Man here who I think need to be made to feel valued for the work they do. And obviously that comes down to pay, but also conditions and making sure that they have the right resources to educate and to teach in the way they want to. I think there's a mixture of emotions. Some people are still angry and feel that they haven't been listened to and that they've been ignored. Other people are just a bit fed up. They want to actually teach. They want this to go away and just to be able to focus on what they want to do with their pupils. And I suppose it's actually attributing all of that and valuing all of that. I'm sorry that those people feel that they haven't been listened to and they're angry, and I completely understand why. And I'm sorry that other people have just got fed up of it and just want to get on the job, which is why I think it's important to move forward and try to draw a line onto the past, to have a decent settlement, to then get rid of some of the action short of strikes so that we can all work together for the benefit of the pupils in our schools, which is what everyone wants at the end of the day. Teachers want to teach, that's why they came into the profession. They don't necessarily want to go on strike or action short of strike. And so that's why I'm actually committed to try to get a fair settlement so we can move forward together. Since 1992, we have followed the UK deals, and part of that is just practical because most of the teachers we get are from the United Kingdom, and so pay parity is quite important for that, although we have also been recruiting from around the world, from Southern Ireland, but further afield. So the Independent School Teachers Review Body reports each year and looks at pay and then makes recommendations, and this year they've recommended a settlement which is 5.5% for those on starting salary to try to encourage more recruitment into the profession, try to get more young people going into teaching as a career, but also 2.75% increase for those on the higher scale, so medium scale teachers and the head teachers as well. So this is certainly above inflation, and we're committed to actually paying this in full on the Isle of Man. We've committed to that. There have been some disagreements about where that comes from the budget, but I can say today that we will fund this without any redundancies for teachers. We want to preserve the excellent education system we've got here. We want to honour the pay deal and make sure that we're on a par with the UK. In fact, more of our senior teachers are on higher pay scales than in the UK, but we really need to keep that parity and have a fair deal. So we're committed to funding the full pay award on the Isle of Man to try and move forward, and hopefully we can get the cooperation of all the unions with that and an agreement to settle this dispute and then move forward in terms of how we also deal with making the teaching environment much better here, to make sure that teachers feel valued. We're committed to fully funding this from September this year. Last year there was a 2.75 pay increase across the board. This is particularly weighted to new starters, which is I think a bit important because some teachers are on a relatively low starting salary. We need to make sure that the whole profession is still attractive for young people to come into. So we're going to move on from September. We've had over the last couple of weeks meetings with all the trade unions. They're now virtual rather than people flying over, but we're having meetings, people are talking, the communication is there, and I think that over the summer, hopefully if we can keep that impetus and keep that momentum, we can actually have a just agreement so when schools reopen in September, we can actually start off with a far more cooperative approach for the benefit of our pupils. I've come in as Minister at a very interesting time for education on the Isle of Man. We've talked about the industrial dispute, but we've also got an education bill coming through, and we've got an independent review of the department, of my role in all this. And all that's going to come together over the summer. We've also got a Tynwald committee looking at the structure and function and the independent review and the bill. So there's a really good opportunity here to listen to teachers' voices, to listen to the voice of their representatives, to listen to pupils and parents as well, to feed into this process so that we can then craft something as we come through the summer which is far better. Now I don't know what the eventual outcome will be because it's going to be hopefully having the input of Tynwald members, parents, teachers and pupils, but I think that by working together and by making sure that we craft the right bill and the right structure of the department going forward, we can achieve something really valuable for our island and really something quite unique in the British Isles.